Welcome back to the Company Show, where we tell like it is and we do not care how you feel. We have another 2026 schedule preview breakdown video to get to today. I have already done the majority of other SEC schools, so if you are interested in checking those out, go to my channel. They will be there. But today, we got the Texas A&M Aggies, the fake wannabe military school. What I believe they are all in a cult, the good old Aggies. How did they do last year? Well, last season, they went 11-2 overall, 7-1 in the SEC. A great year. They made the college football playoffs. They looked pretty damn good last year. They finished 4th overall in the SEC. They did lose to Miami in the playoffs, 10-3 loss within a game where I guess that for both teams, the offenses just decided not to show up. I guess maybe they forgot they had a game that day. They did beat Notre Dame and South Carolina by 1 point, so weird games there. And they did lose to Texas in the regular season, 27-17 last year. They also had a very weird game against Arkansas, where they did win, but they gave up 42 points to Arkansas. They beat the Pigs 45-42. So that was last season. What do they got going on this season? Well, they do have a lot of returning production. Obviously, the coaching staff stays the same. Mike Elko does return as the head coach. Holman Wiggins, offensive coordinator, he's back. And then Lyle Hemphill, I think is how you say his last name. I am horrible with name pronunciation. He returns as the defensive coordinator. And most importantly, Marcel Reed is back as your returning quarterback, as your starting quarterback. Last year, he looked really good. He had 3,169 yards, 62.1 completion percentage, 25 touchdowns, but he had 12 interceptions. And that was a problem for this Texas A&M team last year, was the interceptions, was the turnover by Marcel Reed. And a lot of them came at very crucial times of a game. You take that game against Miami. He threw 2 interceptions in that game, one of them being a game-losing interception. So can he clean that up? That's pretty important. And it seems like his interceptions have gotten worse each year. I was looking at his numbers, and in 2023, obviously he didn't play that much. He threw for 1 interception. But then in 2024, second year, he threw for 6 interceptions. Obviously, he was playing more, so your interceptions are going to go up. The more you play, the more you throw, the more likelihood that you throw an interception. But then last year, 2025, he threw 12. So if the trend continues, he's bound to throw more interceptions this year. If you're an Aggies fan, you hope not, but he's got to clean those interceptions up. You also get running back Ruben Owens back as your starting running back. He had a really solid year last year, 119 carries, 639 yards, 5 touchdowns. So he did good. And he also are returning 2 absolute studs on your defense with your cornerback, Des Ricks, and your defensive tackle, DJ Hicks. Those 2 are returning. You're returning over half of your offense and defense production. Now, I know the returning production isn't the same of what it used to be back in the day, considering where the transfer portal is, but you got a lot of returning starters. A lot of really good players at key positions are returning. However, you did pick up some very key, important players in the transfer portal. You bring in Isaiah Horton, wide receiver, from the transfer portal, which is very important because Casey Concepcion did leave. He went to the NFL, so he is in the league right now, and that was Marcel Reed's number 1 go-to target every game last year. Huge loss for this Aggies team, but I do like the pickup of Isaiah Horton. I really think he's going to be a key contributor to this offense in that wide receiver room, so very big get. Look to their spring game. I didn't watch the spring game. I don't know if it even came on TV. I did go back and look at the stats. Seemed like Marcel Reed didn't look the greatest in his spring game with only 54 completion percentage and 80 yards. But it is a spring game. I always say you got to take away anything you see in the spring game. You got to take it with a grain of salt. So that's what they had last year. That's what they lost. That's what they have coming back. What are my questions for the season? Well, my number 1 question, I already hinted on it, is can Marcel Reed clean up the interceptions? That is one of the most important things. Like I said, he threw 12 interceptions last year. That Miami game was by far the worst because it ended the season. He threw a game-losing interception late in the fourth quarter. They were down by 7, still very much in it. They came out on a drive, and they were going down the field, and they were looking like they had the chance to score and tie the game up at 10-10. He throws an interception. And most people, myself included, thought that's game. This game is over. But this Texas A&M team's defense stood on their head. They forced Miami to go 3 and out, got the ball back to their offense immediately. And what did Marcel Reed do? Very first play of the next drive, he throws an interception. Back-to-back interceptions. That second interception being the end of it, game-losing interception. Miami would go on to win 10-3. So he's got to clean that up. He's got to clean these interceptions up. 12 interceptions, and they're coming at very crucial times of the game. He's got to get better. That's my first question for the season is, can he clean the interceptions up? Second one is, can they avoid these weird games? You look at their schedule last year, now that it's complete, and they had some just flat-out weird games last year against teams that they have no business being that close against. I mentioned Arkansas. They gave up 42 points to Arkansas. They won 45-42 against Arkansas. Weird game. The 1-point win over South Carolina where they won 31-30. Another weird game. And then a very weird game against Auburn where they did not look good at all. Auburn only scored 10, but I think they scored 13. This is like a 13-10 win, maybe 17-10 win for Texas A&M. So can they avoid those weird games? Because I tell you what, it didn't really hurt them last season. They came out of the regular season with only one loss to Texas, made the playoffs. But if they don't clean those games up, especially teams that they have no business being that close to, they should have blown Arkansas out. They should have steamrolled South Carolina, and they should have looked a lot better against Auburn. If they don't, they need to clean that up. These weird games against teams like Arkansas, they have no business doing that. So can they clean those weird games up? And my third question for this team, for this Aggie team going into the 2026 season is, can this team, especially the defense, play more consistent? Can they be more consistent week in and week out? You go back and you look at your last season, and this also kind of expands on my last question, is they had some very weird close games where they gave up a lot of points on defense. They gave up 24 points to UTSA. And you're like, 24 points, that's not a lot. But it was against UTSA. You have no business allowing UTSA to come into your home and put up 24 points on you. 22 points against Utah State. Again, not a lot of points, but you have no business allowing a team like Utah State come into your home and put up 22 points. They give up 40 points to Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame was really good this year. I think Notre Dame will be good this year. But again, giving up 40 points against Notre Dame, 42 points against Arkansas. Again, why are we giving up 42 points against the Pigs? They were not good last year, and they're not going to be good this year. You have no business doing that. And then giving up 30 points to South Carolina, and that was just a weird game overall. Texas A&M was lucky to get a win in South Carolina. I think they went into halftime losing, 28 or 27 to, they were down by 20 points at halftime against that South Carolina game. So the fact that they were able to mount a comeback and win, give credit to them. But again, you have no business giving up 30 points, especially in one half of football. And then you flip it over to the other side. I just talked about how all the games where their defense looked crap. And then you go over and they give up 10 points to Auburn. They give up 17 points to Florida. 9 points to Mississippi State. Granted, those teams aren't the greatest. They're not like world beaters. But when you can hold a team for less than 20, that's really good. And then you only allow Miami to score 10 on you in the playoffs. Granted, you did lose that Miami game, but your defense stood on their head. Miami would then go on to play in the national championship, where they came very close to winning it all. So you have the runner-up school in Miami, where you only allowed them 10 points. So there's just such a Jekyll and Hyde season last year by this Texas A&M team when it comes to what they look like on the field. Some of these games, after it's over, you're like, what the hell was that? You look at the Arkansas game, yeah, they won, but what the hell was that? The South Carolina game, yeah, you won, but you look at it like, what the hell was that? Why could you, what you did in the second half, why could you not do in the first half? This game would have been 55-0. You know, you look at the Miami game. Obviously, unfortunately, you lost, but it's just that game's over and you're scratching your head like, where the hell was our offense? Where was the offense from 2 weeks ago? You know, like, so can they be more consistent? Those are my questions for this Texas A&M team going into this season. Is can Marcel Reed clean up the interceptions? Can they avoid these weird games against teams they have no business being that close to? And can they be more consistent on both offense, that has a lot to do with Marcel Reed, and then on defense specifically? So let's get to the schedule. What I'm going to do is run through their schedule. I'll give you the date and who they play and if it's a home or away game. And then after the schedule, I'll give my takeaways of what I think about the schedule. And then also I will give my opinion and prediction after that. So they do get things started off on September 5th against Missouri State. I saw that this was a 7 p.m. kickoff game. Very weird time for this game. Typically these games are like a noon kickoff. This will probably be one of those games that you can only watch on a streaming channel like Netflix or ESPN Plus or some crap like that. But you get things kicked off on your first game against Missouri State. You are staying at home on September 12th against Arizona State. This is the first half of that home and home with the non-con team against Arizona State. Then you stay at home for the third week in a row, September 19th, where you take on Kentucky. After Kentucky on September 26th, you go on the road to take on LSU. Then you're back home on October 3rd to take on Arkansas. And then back on the road on October 10th to take on Mizzou. So a road game for you there. But then you're back home on October the 17th to take on a Citadel. That's just a weird place game. And then on October 24th, you got to travel on the road to take on Bama. That's going to be a tough one. And then after that Bama game, you do get your bye week there on Halloween. At this point, it's going to be a much-needed bye week. This is week 9 of the season. So a lot of football to play before your bye week there on October 31st. Coming out of your bye week on November 7th, you do take on South Carolina. That is a road game, so you got to travel to South Carolina. And then you're back home on November 14th to take on Tennessee. And then going on the road on November 21st to take on the Sooners, Oklahoma. And then to round things off in your regular season, you are back home on November 27th to take on the Texas Longhorns. So that's your schedule. What are my takeaways? There is a lot of places for this team to trip up, especially on the road. You got to go on the road to LSU, on the road to Bama, on the road to South Carolina, on the road to Oklahoma. In between that South Carolina and Oklahoma team, you got to play Tennessee. Before your LSU game, you play Kentucky. Now, most people just look at that week, that standalone game, like, oh, they'll win. But this is a potential trap game for Texas A&M. It's only the third week of the season, but this is very much a game where they could get caught looking ahead. I don't think Missouri State is going to give you any issue. I don't even think Arizona State is going to give you any issue. And I don't really think Kentucky should give you issue. But if the trends from last year continue this year, this could be one of those games where Texas A&M is not playing consistent up to their level, and it is a very weird, close game. You look in the fourth quarter, and you're like, how is Kentucky winning by 3? Maybe they get caught looking ahead to LSU. So what I'm trying to say is there are a lot of places on the schedule that this Texas A&M team, if they're not careful, they could get tripped up. And we're coming into that Texas game at the end of the season. They got 4 losses. You're like, what happened? A lot of areas, a lot of places for this team to trip up. Second thing, if I was an Aggies fan, I would be pissed with this home slate. This is a very shitty, weak home slate. You kick things off with the Missouri State and Arizona State. Now, obviously, Missouri State is just one of those cupcake teams, whatever, name your score. Every team in the SEC has it. Most every team in the country has it. Now, I do think the Arizona State is going to be a fun non-con game, but at the end of the day, it's Arizona State. I don't think they're going to be that competitive. And then you got Citadel at home in the middle of the season on October the 17th. I don't like where that sits at. That I feel like that game should be in the beginning of the season, but obviously you can only control so much with what you got on your season. So you got those 3 games at home, and then you jump into your SEC play. You got Kentucky, Arkansas at home. Now you do get Tennessee and Texas, but those don't come into the end of your year. And honestly, those are really your only 2 good home games. So your home games are Missouri State, Arizona State, Kentucky, Arkansas, Tennessee, Citadel, Tennessee, and Texas. And like I said, that Texas game is going to be fun. It's a home game. You're more than happy to have that game at home. The Tennessee game, I think, is going to be good. But what happens if you go to this Tennessee game at the end of the season and Tennessee's not looking too hot? It's very well that Tennessee could come into this game with more than 3 losses. So I think it's a very weak home slate. If I was an Aggies fan, I'd be a little bit disappointed. I'd be excited for that home game against Texas, like I mentioned, but other than that, I'd be disappointed. And then, out of that, my last takeaway is that you have a very difficult second half of this season, of the schedule. Like I said, your bye week doesn't come until week 9, October 31st, after Alabama. But your last 6 games of the season are on the road at Alabama, on the road at South Carolina, home game against Tennessee, on the road at Oklahoma, and then a home game in Texas. You got Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Texas all within 3 weeks. Good luck. Good freaking luck. That is difficult. I don't think any team in the country is going undefeated in those games within 6 weeks. I don't think the Dogs would. I don't think Alabama would. I don't think Ohio State would. I don't think Indiana would. Oregon, I don't think so. Texas, I don't think so. Equivalent, like any team, I don't think they're playing those 5 games in those 6 weeks and going undefeated. That's my takeaways. So what do I believe the floor for this Texas A&M Aggie team is? Well, you're not going to like it, but I think the floor is 7-5. I really do. I mentioned there's a lot of places that this Aggie team could trip up. You can go on the road to lose LSU. You can go on the road and lose to Alabama. You can lose to Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas. You can find yourself going on the road to losing to South Carolina. You can find yourself losing to Kentucky if you get caught looking ahead to LSU. There's a lot of places for this team to trip up. Now, do I think you lose all those games? Absolutely not. No. So that's why I have the floor at 7-5. I think that this Texas A&M team has so much returning production and has a lot of talent that there is zero reason that they should go worse than 7-5. And I will say this: if for whatever reason at the end of the season this Texas A&M does go worse than 7-5, then Mike Elko is a no-go, fired immediately. So that's the floor. What do I think the ceiling is for this team? I think the ceiling is 10-2. I think that this Texas A&M team is very capable of going 10-2. Now, if you've watched all my other videos, I think the SEC is very good this year. I think it is a very difficult. I do not have any team going better than 11-1 in the SEC. I still have a few more teams to make videos on. I'm not going to take any of the other teams to go undefeated. I didn't take my Dogs to go undefeated. So I think the ceiling for this Texas A&M team is 10-2. So what is my prediction? Well, I just said that I believe your ceiling is 10-2. You're very capable of going 10-2. I think you get a win against Missouri State, Arizona State. I think you beat Kentucky. I think it might be one of those weird games, but I think you beat Kentucky. I think you beat Arkansas. I think you go on the road to beat Mizzou. I think you beat the Citadel. I do think you go on the road to beat South Carolina. I think you beat Tennessee. That leaves you with Oklahoma, on the road to Oklahoma, Texas, on the road to LSU, and then on the road at Alabama. So at that point, you're sitting at 8-4 with 4 games that I haven't mentioned. I think you go on the road to beat Alabama. I have made an Alabama video a few months ago. I was a little bit higher on Alabama a few months than where I am now. I'm starting to have a lot of doubts about this Alabama team now that I'm getting to look at these other teams in depth, look at their roster. I think Alabama is going to struggle. I do think Alabama probably goes 8-4 this year. But this isn't about Alabama. This is about Texas A&M. I think you go on the road to beat Alabama, get a huge win there in Tuscaloosa, and I actually think you go on the road to beat Oklahoma. I've got you going 10-2. I said your ceiling was 10-2. I think you go 10-2 with the loss on the road at LSU and losing your last game of the regular season against Texas in that rival game. I do think that Texas is just that good. And I know LSU's got Lane Kiffin first year there, but I think that it's a home game for the Tigers. I think it's just going to be a little bit too much for this Texas A&M game to overcome. I actually see Marcel Reed throwing another game-losing interception on the road against LSU. So I've got this Texas A&M team going 10-2 in the 2026 season. I think that's going to be good enough to get you to the playoffs. I think it's going to be just shy enough to get you to the SEC championship game. But who knows? A 10-2 team, Texas A&M team, very well could make the SEC championship, depending on what other teams do. Maybe you have a tiebreaker with Texas. Maybe you have a tiebreaker with Georgia. Maybe Georgia goes 10-2 and you have a tiebreaker where you get in over them. But I think you're going to get just left outside of the SEC championship game. But I do think you make the playoffs in 2026 with a 10-2 regular season record. So those are my thoughts. That's what I got Texas A&M doing. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you agree, if you disagree. If you disagree, let me know what you think. Let me know if you think they beat LSU or if they beat Texas. Let me know if they actually lose to Alabama. Let me know what you think down in the comments. But other than that, over and out.